Podcasting between Leeds and London, Interesting Podcast is your indispensable guide to the more interesting things in life. Your hosts are about to take you on a journey through all that they find interesting, curious, helpful, and downright bizarre. And now, here are your hosts, Matt and Rick.
And like a newborn baby taking its first breaths in the world, Interesting Podcast is born. I'm Rick. I'm here with Matt. It's exciting, isn't it, Matt?
It is exciting. It's our first ever episode, our first ever podcast of what should be a very interesting and illustrious season.
It's going to be interesting. What's interesting? What do we find interesting?
Well, this is what we hope to explore with these podcasts. We are trying to find out what we find interesting. We're trying to find what interesting is. And we're going to look at different elements of the arts, different people, everything from books, films, TV. We're going to do like book reviews. We're going to be speaking to interesting people. And we are trying to define what interesting actually is.
But we're not going to be too serious, are we?
We're not. It's not going to be too highbrow. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interactive. And speaking about being interactive, we want you to tell us what you find interesting. So how can people get in contact with us and tell us what's interesting, Rick?
Well, we have been social media junkies over the past couple of weeks. So we have a Twitter account. You can tweet us at @InterestingPod. There is no cast. Interesting Podcast is too long for Twitter, so tweet us at InterestingPod. There is a Facebook page. It's called Interesting Podcast. You can find that at www.facebook.com/Interesting Podcast, or by searching for Interesting Podcast. You can also email us both. So our website is www.interestingpodcast.com, and you can email me, Rick, R-I-C-K, at interestingpodcast.com. Or Matt,
which is MATT at interestingpodcast.com as well. But we really want to hear about what you find interesting. So any interesting books that you've read, any films that you've seen,
any
music,
blogs that you subscribe to, what's in your RSS feed. We like stuff as well, don't we, Matt?
We like free stuff. We like free stuff that's not meant to be free.
No.
We don't want napkins. We don't want coffee stirrers. We want stuff that you're meant to pay for, but we want that free. We might as well be open and honest about it. If you send us free stuff, we will mention you on our podcast. We will mention you. You will be our free stuff hero. And so if you have free stuff, or if you have stuff that you want to make free to us, please get in contact. We'll take anything. We'll take absolutely anything.
So today, this is the first podcast, as you say. The aim is we'll try and keep the length of these podcasts to around half an hour. Today we've got a great podcast for you. We've got an interview with a guy called Patrick Powers, who is a fantastic and amazing entrepreneur who Matt and I have met before, and he's a very exciting bloke. And then we're going to have a look at a book in the latter part of the podcast.
That's right. Patrick Powers has come to speak for at an event which I run called Interesting Talks, and he actually came to give about a 90-minute talk a couple of months ago. We found him so interesting, we've invited him back on to talk about why people settle for less and how to get involved in business. And this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing sort of relatively short interviews with a variety of different people. We also have people who are going to be popping up from doctors to psychologists to, we have lots and lots of people who are going to be involved in the show. And if you want to be involved, obviously you know how to get in contact with us. So it's going to be, every week is going to be a little bit different, but we are going to be talking about some books later on today after we've been talking to Patrick about business.
Excellent. Well, I know I'm really excited. This is the first one. I'm sure we'll learn and grow. We've already had a talk about some features that we can put in. We hope to keep each episode different. From me, I mean, what's the most interesting thing on your plate at the moment, Matt?
The most interesting thing on my plate, basically, Basically, do you know what I'm doing? I'm taking stock of my life at the moment. Do you know what, Rick? And so I'm working out where I am at the moment, what I want to achieve, and some different things. So yeah, my life is interesting to me, not to anybody else, but to me at the moment. So yeah, doing this podcast I find highly interesting. I'm getting very much into blogging, podcasting, and web development. So I've been learning a lot about that, and I do find it very interesting actually how keywords work, how we can attract a good audience so people can listen and get involved. What about yourself? What do you find interesting at the moment, Rick?
Well, I'm finding a lot of things interesting at the moment, Matt. I'm into trivia at the moment. Little interesting thing. Did you know, for example, that hippo milk is pink? Did you know that?
Hippo milk is pink?
Hippo milk is pink.
I didn't know that. I didn't know hippos had milk, let alone...
Excuse me, love. I'm just going out to milk the hippo.
Why would it be in Australia?
That is an extremely good point. Probably not too well considered on my part. But don't lose the fact around the fact that hippo milk is pink. That is interesting, of course.
I think it would be best if it was a hippo with pink milk in Australia.
And if anybody has a hippo, please get in touch because
we can confirm this.
I will drink pink hippo milk.
Oh, could you imagine milking a hippo? So yeah, Rick likes his trip. Tell us something else interesting, Rick.
Okay. Did you know if you put 2 straws in your mouth, one in some liquid and one not in some liquid, you can't drink the liquid through the straw that's in the liquid?
I'm going to try that. I like things like this. In fact, if you go onto YouTube, if you look at Richard Wiseman, he's got some great things, some party tricks that use science and things like this as well. So check out Richard Wiseman. Let's get him on the show at some point as well. But let's get on with the show. We've got interviews, we've got book reviews coming up, so let's get on with it. And today we've got our first featured guest, Patrick Powers. Patrick Powers is a marketing expert who's specializing in direct response copy. He helps small business owners in creating leads and turning them into paying clients. He is the author of 2 books, Turn Your Contacts into Cash and Only Suckers Settle for Less Than Rich. He is also the founder of Entrepreneurs in London, which is a very successful meetup in London. And so please welcome Patrick M. Powers. So Patrick, can you hear us okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us and being our first guest on the interesting podcast.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting.
Brilliant. It's a great idea, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. So you're coming on today to talk about mainly why only suckers settle for less than rich. So this is an interesting podcast. You're our first guest. Take us away, Patrick Powers.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so my subject today is basically why do people settle for a lot less than I can actually get, and specifically why they don't start in business. And I've as I said before I wrote the book, or you said before I wrote the book, Only Suckers Settle for Less Than Rich. And what it's about is basically a lot of strategies on how to get more out of life. It's not just about settling for less than rich, because I think people settle in so many different areas in life. You know, they settle for less than better health than they can get, less than better health, relationship, and so on, and so less than better friends. You know, oh my God, in my early life, the friends I had, oh my God, I'm glad I woke up and didn't settle for that kind of friends. So why do people actually settle? And I think it has a lot to do with your upbringing, so to speak, the people that you surround yourself with, because they will kind of give you a belief what's possible. Because I think it all comes back to belief in what's possible. When I was a kid, and I was young, you know, I was told by my parents and everybody that I should forget my foolish dreams. You know, I had dreams of becoming a big business person and so on. And they said, forget your foolish dreams. You know, that's just special people that reach. And I was thinking, well, you know, so I'm not special. Thanks, Mom. but that you know, that's the kind of the message I think that many entrepreneurs and people wanting to achieve something special in life, to hear over and over again. Don't just settle for a normal job. You should be happy having a normal job. But I wasn't happy having a normal job, so I pushed on, and I'm really, really glad. I think it was around 2021 when I first really woke up, and I remember exactly what sparked that. And I was in the library one day. I was a bit of a bookworm back then, and well, still am. I love reading, but I was very, very introverted kid. I was afraid of, had social anxiety and so on. I was not very good with other people. And so I was living half my life in a library. And one day I found this book called How to Become the Boss and Stay the Boss. And I turned it around and read the back cover, and it basically said, it started with, "This is a fantastic book. I know it because I wrote it." So I thought, wow, that's a guy who's really, first of all, he has a lot of confidence, and he has humor as well. Let me just read this book, and that completely opened up my world. There's a guy who, his name is Harry Motor, and he is Danish like me, but he's had huge success internationally. He started as a blacksmith working in Ford, and worked his way up to become a general manager of Ford. And then he became general manager of Volvo Australia, or he became a troubleshooter out there. And he was hugely successful. So that inspired me. I mean, the guy who used to be a blacksmith and worked his way all the way up, that was just inspiring to me. And he really gave me the belief that you can become anything you want. So that was kind of the beginning. And I really, having now been in this kind of world of personal development and business and success training, I really truly believe that we can become almost anything that we want. I've met so many people that literally came from nowhere to success overnight, simply because they made a decision. Just make a decision to go for more. Today, it's so hard for me to understand why people just settle for what they have. And I think it's as I said before, it's partially a social programming, and wherever we grew up, the people that tell us, just settle, and you it's crazy, and you'll never be anything else, and special, all that crap. But also, I think it's actually kind of in our genes, in most people's genes, that you don't really, like, when you have your basic needs covered, you don't strive for more. And in fact, I've recently, I heard I was watching a nature program. I love natural science and so on, and I was watching this program about dinosaurs, and there was also something about the Australian bird cassowar, and that's kind of a remnant from the dinosaurs, and what they're basically saying is that this bird actually used to fly. It used to be a flying dinosaur. But then, because of changes in the environment, suddenly it didn't have any enemies whatsoever. And so over the years, it's because it didn't have to, and because it took a lot of energy to fly, it just became lazy, so to speak, and lost its ability to fly because it didn't have to. And that is actually a tendency. It's actually a tendency in the universe, building blocks in the universe, and everything in the universe basically goes from more structured towards less structured. Okay, so without energy being put into it, everything goes into more chaos, towards more chaos, and a lesser form of energy. So I think it's kind of the default state of the universe and all beings, that we do as less as we possibly can, as long as we can stay alive and just get our basic needs covered. Of course, in my opinion, that is not going to lead to happiness. It's not complete fulfillment. You're not going to be a bird soaring and having, just that pleasure of living a life of fulfillment and contentment. And I think
Patrick,
that's... Yeah.
What is it that stops people flying and soaring?
I mean, I think it's mostly fear, and especially when we talk about going into business, people have been programmed by this. Fear will it's dangerous. It's dangerous going into business, which is crazy because you can start business for free. Have you heard about the internet? Hello, it's free to start a business on the internet. There's so many ways you can do it. Just start a YouTube channel. There was this girl who used to, she's crazy about makeup and stuff, and she was trying to get a job with L'Oreal, I think, one of the big companies. And she was rejected over and over again. She created her own YouTube channel and just did these crazy makeups, and then she got millions and millions and millions of views. I think she got like 100 million views, and then she actually got a sponsorship deal contract for $1 million with L'Oreal. That's just one example out of, I could come up with hundreds and hundreds of examples of ways that you can get into business for free. So forget about that is dangerous, that is risky. It's more risky to be an employee because you have no control. Right? So I think that's my time up. Okay.
So with what you're kind of saying though as well, don't you think that basically people don't strive for settling for less than what they can get, but that's also part of evolution in a sense, so to do sort of conserving energy.
Yeah.
So what people have to do is basically not stop being lazy in a sense, but realize you do have to put more effort in.
Oh yeah.
Rather than just resting on your laurels and just but if you see the way that kind of things that are developing in the world, everything's going towards labor-saving devices. Mm-hmm. And you can live a life without ever leaving your house these days. You can live off the internet. You can live off having everything delivered to you. So if people are thinking, right, okay, I've made that decision, which you've mentioned. Once you've made the decision, that's it. What are some things which they can then go and do to actually start to achieve more in their life?
Wow, that's really, really hard to answer the question because it all depends on your strengths, your interests, and so on. But I would start with your interest. What are you interested in? And I would start a blog and creating a following. Start getting out on social media, actually creating a following around the subject that you're interested in. And when again, just like this girl that created a huge following on YouTube, when you have enough followers, it's easy to create a business from that. You could actually live from the advertising. If you get enough viewers, you get enough followers, you can live from the advertising alone. I mean, you need a lot for that, but that's just one example. But you should be creating a following, getting some content out there on the internet, whether it's video or your blog or your write or whatever it is. That's the first step.
Okay, so basically you create a following, you build it around what you're already interested in, develop that, create a following, whether that be through a blog, through a YouTube channel, through Twitter, well, all three hopefully, and also Facebook and Facebook pages. And then once you actually have sufficient following, that you can actually then begin to turn your contacts into cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. See what I did there? So you can actually turn your contacts into cash and actually develop a business from there. Well, cool. Thank you very much, Patrick. If people who are listening, if they want to hear more about you, if they want to sort of get in contact or get your books or actually go to your websites, please can you give us some information about how people can actually find you?
Yeah, if you're in London, UK, of course, and you're an entrepreneur or thinking about becoming one, the best place is entrepreneursinlondon.co.uk. It is a community of entrepreneurs, and we meet at least on a monthly basis. And if you're not an entrepreneur and you'd like to connect with me anyway, hear about my stuff, either Patrick M like in mother, powers.com, patrickmpowers.com, or just find me on Facebook. That's where I spend most of my online social life.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Patrick. Patrick also did speak for us earlier this year, and that talk can be downloaded from the Interesting Talks website. All this information will also be in the show notes. Any last thoughts from yourself, Rick?
None from me, Matt.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Patrick. And
you're welcome.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks ever so much, Patrick.
You're welcome.
What a great interview by Patrick M. Powers there.
He's an interesting bloke, isn't he, Matt?
He is an interesting bloke. I could have spoken to him for hours.
Do you know what? When he came to Interesting Talks, and I remember meeting him, and we went to the pub afterwards, and I was actually blown away by. He said he was talking there about how you can set up a business for free, but he was talking about the $50 business and creating a following and writing a book, and it is really, really interesting. I go to work for however many hours a week, and I could sit there and create a business online.
Yeah, well. Basically, what he was talking about and how to create a following about something you enjoy doing, this is sort of testament to that, really. If you look at, Interesting Talks, and if you look about all the businesses which I've actually done in the past, it has followed this script. You find something you enjoy doing, and you create a following around that. But I think for our first interview, I think that was really good, and he's a very, very interesting guy, is Patrick. And if people want to listen to his full a talk that he gave for Interesting Talks, go to the Interesting Talks website and go to the files. There'll also be links to this in the show notes as well, but he did give an 1.5-hour presentation. So,
I'm gonna set up a business so I can plug it during Interesting Podcast.
What's your business going to be, Rick?
I have no idea. I imagine it'll be food related.
You are a foodie.
I am a foodie, yes, big foodie. We'll maybe have a whole podcast related to things that I eat. Matt, I couldn't help thinking with Patrick there. He was talking about the fact that he really likes to read books, and I think that's something we all share. You're a big reader, aren't you?
I am.
And I think what we would like to do, and we've spoken about this as part of Interesting Podcasts, we want to take books, we want to take blogs, or we want to take things people have written, whether they're online, in paper form, whatever, and have a discussion about them, because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in the printed word. And perhaps, Matt, what's on your bedside table at the moment?
On my bedside table? Actually, it's not on my bedside table. I actually downloaded the audiobook of it.
Oh, I love audiobooks.
They are great. It's Bad Science by Ben Goldacre. This is something which I was going to read. It's been on my reading list for so long, so long. And then I actually bought it. I downloaded it the other day. It's actually quite long. It's about 7 or 8 hours all in all.
Well, audiobooks are. This is the thing. I love them because I love the ease of them. But they are 7 or 8 hours for something that you can read in 2 or 3.
That's true, actually.
Love audiobooks on holiday because you don't have that turn-pagey problem where you've got the sun in the eyes and you have to use the book to block it out. And you get sun cream all over your book.
I sometimes find it a little bit hard to focus purely on the book itself because, you tend to do other things as well. But I've listened to it a couple of times, and what I really like about Ben Goldacre, that he is a doctor, and if people
real one,
he's a real doctor, and if people haven't heard about him before, just a quick synopsis about it. Ben Goldacre's wise and witty bestseller lifts the lid on quack doctors, flake statistics, scaremongering journalists, and evil pharmaceutical corporations. And he attacks many people, people specifically, which I know you like, and also practices. And one of his big things that he goes after is homeopathy. Now, I work as a hypnotherapist, as a hypnotist, so I'm actually involved in the alternative therapy, alternative medicine world to some degree, which puts me in a sort of a weird situation, because although I'm a hypnotherapist, and a lot of people who are hypnotherapists seem to have this this kind of weird kind of mentality about how they do things and what hypnosis really is, and use things like quantum when they really shouldn't be using words like quantum. They don't know what it means.
Nobody knows what it means.
They use what the bleep? Well, you don't know what the answer is, but that does not give you license to make one up. And
I've read this book. Obviously, you told me in advance that we were going to talk about this, so I have read Bad Science, and I think the thing, it's necessarily attacking people. The whole thing that underlies the book is that if you're going to make a claim, you can test it. You can scientifically test whether or not your hypothesis works. And in the world of science, there is nothing wrong with having a hypothesis and it turning out to be wrong. And what you do is you trial it. You use randomized trials, and his book is basically basically, and it is interesting, this might not make it sound interesting, but it's about how you test something scientifically.
Yeah.
And then it goes through a whole range of things that are perceived or that we know about or we like that have no scientific basis. And so homeopathy is on the list, but it also includes things like brain gym. It also includes things like face creams, where they talk about the proteins in the face cream and like how face creams are charging like 30 quid a pot when really it's mashed up vegetable pulp in oil. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether you spend 20p or 20 quid, that's what it is. And I think it's just fascinating to have a scientist's point of view on how things are tested and how we get knowledge. And it even directs you to the places you can find the tests. So if you've got some, like I bet if we looked on the database, we can find some reasonable trials about hypnosis and some of the evidence that comes out of it.
Well, this is the whole thing, evidence-based medicine. This is what, you know, he really stands for. And with a lot of the alternative therapies, I think the most interesting quote that alternative therapists tend to give is that science is just one way of measuring something, or this can't be measured by using the scientific method, which is just ridiculous. Science is just a measure of reality. It is the measure of life. It is testing what's there. So by saying you can't do a double-blind test on either homeopathy or Reiki or any other things which he tends to mention, saying that it can't be tested in this way is just absolutely ridiculous. Now, I do believe in the placebo effect.
I've got a gem here. I've got an absolute gem. I'm gonna read you the first sentence in chapter 7. This chapter's entitled Dr. Gillian McKeith, PhD. And he says, I'm going to push the boat out here and suggest that since you've bought this book, you may already be harbouring some suspicions about multimillionaire pill entrepreneur and clinical nutritionist Gillian McKeith. Or, to give her full medical title, Gillian McKeith. Brilliant.
I think that's great. And it tells you where she actually did her doctorates. You can actually do 2 doctorates for the price of one, I believe, at the school that she actually did it, or the online university. And I think that this is... he raises a very interesting point about the science in the media is more to do with sales than it is to do with science.
Absolutely. And Ben Goldacre takes the unique and slightly amusing step of proving where these PhDs came from by getting one for his cat.
Yes.
So in his downstairs toilet, he has the PhD certificate for his cat that he has got from the same university as Dr. Gillian McKeith, PhD.
And see, with coming into this as well, what is very dangerous or can be very misleading is also Chinese medicine as well. But a Chinese doctor or a Chinese doctor in traditional Chinese medicine is not a medical doctor. And I've seen so many studies where I've actually been before I knew about science, and I've been to sort of Chinese doctors, and they give you so many pills, so many different things, and people don't realise the actual steroid content and what's actually in them. Honestly, you can gain a lot of weight. It can actually do you a lot of damage.
Well, this again is something interesting, Matt. How is it a sustainable business model? Everywhere I go, there are Chinese herbalists and like these shops with lots of jars. They look like the same jars you used to get your rhubarb and custard out of when you were a kid, full of kind of herbs and things. How do they make any money? How's that a business model? You always walk past and there's 2 of them sat in the foyer doing nothing.
But do you know what? I've never seen anybody in them. I've been in them
Ever.
myself.
Money laundering.
I've been in for like massage, and because I do like massage and stuff like that. But if I'm ill, go to a doctor. In fact, we're going to be having in the future. We are going to be having our resident GP who's going to be coming on and talking about things like this as well. So
yes, I think the thing is, Ben Goldacre, I would like to tie up on this book. We haven't really gone into it in detail.
No.
I think what we will be doing is any books that we talk about, we will try and get on the website so that you can see them there. You can read the reviews. You can buy them. That will help support this site. We need to speak to Ben Goldacre.
Matt. We want Ben Goldacre on the podcast.
We're going to speak. I know he's on Twitter, so I think we'll tweet him. We'll hound him. If we tweet him 3 times a day, every day for the next year, he will spare 10 minutes, will he?
Well, hopefully. I think he's a decent guy. Come on, Ben. Doctor.
Ben, please.
please to our podcast.
On our knees. We are scientifically proven to work.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and he hasn't come on yet, go onto his Twitter and just go on an interesting podcast. So, Rick, tell us, how are we going to, for the people listening, how do they get in contact with us? How do they connect with us?
Okay, well, all kinds of ways. Firstly, there's a website. There's interestingpodcast.com. They can tweet us at interestingpod. Forget the cast. It's just at interestingpod. Twitter wouldn't let us fit it in. And there's the Facebook page, the Interesting Podcast Facebook page, which if you type in www.facebook.com/interestingpodcast, you will reach to. But Matt, sadly, how quickly has this gone? We are absolutely out of time.
I know.
All that's left for us to say is thank you for listening. It's good now, don't you agree? But it is going to get better.
It's going to get better every single episode. We want your feedback. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to hear more of and less of.
Tell us what you're reading, what you're looking at, what you're seeing, who you're seeing, any interesting talks, anything interesting, please let us know. All that's left for us to do now is cue up our funky outro with our mate Peter Baker. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for listening to Interesting Podcast with Matt and Rick. Obviously, any views expressed herein are those of the hosts and no one else. If you like what you just heard, please share the website www.interestingpodcast.com with your friends, family and colleagues. You can subscribe, listen to the archive podcast and get in touch. Do you have something interesting to say? We'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. Tweet us at InterestingPod and like our Interesting Podcast Facebook page. Until next time.